let's talk about the Taylor Swift tax. So here's the article. Let me just read the headline real fast. This is on CNBC. Rhode Island's Taylor Swift tax on vacation homes of the wealthy is spreading to other states. And as we go down this article, and it kind of gives some numbers here, do you think I should read this at all? Or
no, what it is, and I'm familiar with it. It is, these municipalities are imposing surcharges, additional taxes on non-owner occupied properties. Okay. And so that affects us when we're buying second homes and renting them out as short-term rentals, right? Or investor properties. And it's happening in a lot of different areas. It's not just Rhode Island. Okay. They use her property as an example because it's this extreme example of a $20+ million property. Yeah. $28 million property. And so her taxes are not quite doubling, but they're going from a couple $100,000 to 100, raising by 130, 150 grand. And so these surcharges on the property taxes on non-owner occupied properties are being talked about in a lot of different areas and different states. Now, the drawback, and where I think the states need to be really careful, is I think that it does make at certain times make sense, right? You're talking about Florida, for example, right now. Getting rid of property tax. And they're saying Ron DeSantis is making a huge push to get rid of property tax. But he is saying only on owner-occupied properties. And that makes sense, right? You're saying, hey, listen, we want people moving here, contributing to Florida, everything else. Now, we can argue that rentals, short-term rentals, they're still contributing, right? So you can definitely make the argument, and I agree with the argument. But we are seeing, and like if I had to make an argument one side or the other, I'm definitely on the argument side of, hey, listen, we contribute to the area, we contribute to the economy, and property tax should be equal across the board. However, you do need to be aware that this is happening. Our neighboring state of Idaho, right here next to us, has you pay higher property tax if you have a non-owner occupied property in Idaho. There's a number of states doing it, and you really need to look into it. Colorado was trying to pass a law where they were going to triple the property taxes on short-term rentals and I don't think it was just non-owner occupied properties. I think they were specifically targeting short-term rentals in Colorado. And it didn't pass. It was up on the docket, didn't pass. But when those things conversations start to happen, as an investor, property tax is a big fixed expense that we pay every single year on our properties. And so we need to be very careful and pay attention to that when we buy into those types of areas. If that stuff has been had conversations about, again, you not to get political by any stretch, because Idaho is a very conservative state and they have double property tax, but you will find that you're going to see this in more left-leaning areas and left-leaning states because they're going to be higher regulated. Florida is not, though, right? But they're talking about eliminating it and then keeping it on the non-owner occupants. So that's not a sweeping statement, but you will typically find you need to pay attention to those areas that are higher regulations and more strict rules and regulations around not just short-term rentals, but pretty much everything, right? And so,
no, is this to say this is happening to short-term rentals, or is this? I mean, what about like if you have a long-term rental? Because it's your second
occupied,
so that would also happen to you. So this isn't. I don't want to say this is just short-term rentals. This is if you were.
Yeah, it's not just short-term rentals. Like these are non-owner occupied property tax increases. Okay. And so it affects long-term rentals, everything else. And so what does that do to rental cost? What does that do to the cost of housing?
Oh wow, that's interesting.
So you're rewarding the property owner, which we do have. Like everything is written for ownership, right? Like tax rules, everything else. Right. And so as a renter, we've talked about this before, you just continue to get behind the eight ball. And these property taxes on non-owner occupied property taxes, they're getting passed. That's going to get passed on to the ultimately to the consumer. In our world, it's a guest, but I mean, it can be just a regular long-term renter.
Now, okay. Now this is really, correct me if I'm wrong here in this thought process. When Airbnb hikes up their prices, we talked about fixing your prices and all that, so you're still making money on it. Say you have a property here in Rhode Island and they're going to impose this new property tax. Would you then just all the short-term rentals in Rhode Island would just hike up their prices to match or to help with the huge taxes
and
now?
It doesn't happen across the board. It's never all,
of course.
Yeah, a good majority of them are going to raise their rates. Yeah,
okay, so then now the market's
forced to.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Huh.
Just like long-term rents will go up in those areas because they're going to be forced to pass that on, right? They're going to say, hey, listen, I don't want this extra $10,000 loss. I was just breaking even on my property. I'm not even really trying to make money on this property. I just want to break even. But if it's an extra 10 grand a year, that's an extra $800 a month for your renter to have to cover that. That's a big deal.
That is a big deal.
And so it's going to get passed on most likely anyways. And so I think that sometimes those municipalities are a little short-sighted. They're trying to solve one problem and they don't realize the trickle-down effect of some of these policies. You know, all of your cities, like, you know, your highest regulated cities, San Francisco, New York, they have the highest rents in the nation. And they claim that all these rules and regulations and everything else are to bring rents down. It doesn't work.
No.
So
they're all up.
They're all up.
Yeah.
They're super high.
Yeah.
And so
what's the thought process on this then? To tax the people who are buying these expensive property or the second properties, why would you want to tax them
I think you have to
more?
be careful again, because most of the areas that people buy second homes in, vacation homes, second homes, they're not typically going to be sustained. Like, you don't have a lot of owner occupants there. And so you're penalizing people for coming in and contributing to the economy with taxes and use and everything else. And many of these areas, think about these resort destinations.
Okay.
We go visit them, but a lot of times there's not a lot of people who just live there, right?
Right.
And so if you're trying to turn them into owner occupied markets, I don't know, you know, if that's the ultimate goal, but a lot of these areas that are getting affected by it they're not going to be owner occupied areas anyways. They were always second home areas.
It's a touristy area.
It's a touristy area. I mean, my first short-term rental is in an area called Bear Lake, Utah, and up there it's a madhouse. You should see how many homes are up there. In the summertime, you can't even drive on the streets because it's gotten so busy. It's this backyard resort town in a big lake, mountain lake in northern Utah, and I think the population of the entire town is probably 300. Go up there now in the middle of the winter. There's almost nobody there. There's 2 gas stations. No restaurants are open because nobody lives there. And so they're there for the tourists. And so you're going to double property tax in an area to what? What's the ultimate goal? Just to make extra revenue in these areas? It's going to, you know, I don't think it's a smart move personally.
Yeah.
But it affects, in my opinion, negatively on these other areas that are mostly destination type areas. And so, you know, I don't know where Taylor Swift is in. My guess is it's probably more of a resort area in Rhode Island, but maybe it's not. And of why they, I mean, let's see.
Watch Hill and Westerly.
Yeah. So I should know. I've actually never been to Rhode Island.
I don't know. I don't know anything.
Never been to Rhode Island.
That's a really interesting to keep in mind. But I just want the listeners to make sure that they understand this is not just for short-term rentals. This is for other
non-owner occupant, and it is happening in multiple states. We are seeing it. We've seen it in a number of different states being proposed. We've seen it implemented in certain states. And so again, when it comes down to underwriting and it comes down to running your numbers and understanding this stuff, you just got to pay attention to it.